Yes, you should be able to see my presentation now, I believe.
Yep, I see it. It's all yours.
Okay, perfect. Hi, I'm happy to be here again. My name is Tim Reichert, and I've been an audio person, mostly composer, sound designer, audio director for visual novels for some time now. You might remember me from previous visual novel conferences. You were here before. And I will be talking about the hidden complexity of audio formats simplified for visual novels. Since this is a 5-minute talk, I won't be able to go too deep into the details, but I will upload a longer and more thorough document into the Shill Stream channel on the Zika Project Discord server. So no worries if I'm going too fast, you can read it all up again later. I mainly use RenPy as a reference, since it's the visual novel engine I've had the most experience with. These points will mostly also apply to other engines though, since the file types I will be talking about are common, but make sure to read your engine's documentation to make sure. So RenPy supports these formats: opus, OGG vorbis, MP3, and wave, or PCM. RenPy does support flac as well, even if it isn't listed. So what the heck are all of these audio codecs? You can categorize audio files depending on two factors: whether they're compressed or uncompressed, and whether they're lossy or lossless. Compressed means that their file size is smaller, as you've probably already figured. Lossy means that most of the unnecessary information has been cut from the files, allowing the files to be even smaller. For simplicity's sake, I will be calling these by their common file endings, since that's what most people are used to. This means that I will use WAV files instead of PCM encoded files, and OGG files instead of OGG vorbis encoded files. All right, let me start with the lossless files, WAV and flac. The difference between them, as you can see, is that the flac files are compressed. This means flac files take up less space than WAV files, but they're still bigger than the lossless OGG, MP3, or opus. It is easier to add metadata to flac files, like for example, the name of the composer, the name of the piece, etc. WAV files, on the other hand, are less CPU intensive. Since both are lossless, they're great for archiving and editing. You generally don't want to edit lossy files. While flac files are not great, a great choice for game audio, they are great for archiving, better than WAV files since they take up less space and handle metadata better. Right, let's move on to MP3 files. I don't think there's any reason to really use them, except if, for example, Opus or OGG aren't supported, as might be the case with WebKit-based web browsers, according to RenPy's documentation. MP3s oftentimes don't loop seamlessly, because encoders usually add a bit of silence at the beginning, as you can see on the left here. Audacity automatically hides that silence, but it's still there. Either way, it will usually not sound great if your piece of music or ambience is supposed to loop seamlessly. Some decoders can skip this gap. This is called gapless playback, but as far as I know, RenPy might not or doesn't support that feature. All right. Many of you likely know of OGG files. They don't take up much space and support seamless looping. Why would you not want to use OGG files? Well, let me introduce you to Opus. Opus is essentially the successor of OGG. Opus files are smaller than OGG files and have better quality preservation at lower settings. Sounds like they're essentially better than OGG files, but the problem is CPU usage. Opus files are more CPU intensive than OGG files. WAV files, on the other end of the spectrum, don't labor the CPU, but are huge in file size. So it's a balancing act between CPU and memory/disk space. Delay can also be a factor. A more complicated encoding format like Opus can cause a bigger delay between the sound being triggered and the sound being played than OGG files. While WAV files don't have any decompression delay since they don't need to be decompressed. But since WAV files are bigger, it might take longer to transfer them into memory, again, leading to delay. Many engines can load audio into memory before it is needed to minimize delay. RenPy can kind of do that with audio queue, as far as I know, but it's kind of finicky. So to sum things up, Opus files are smaller, OGG files are less CPU intensive, and less delay acceptable. Let's get to the simplify part of the title. A lot of visual novels made in RenPy aren't necessarily CPU intensive, and delay is usually also not a big factor either, since for many visual novels it doesn't make that much of a difference whether the sound effect is played a few frames delayed. For action games like shooters, this might be noticeable. For typical visual novels, probably not. This essentially means that unless you're running into CPU problems or you're having delay problems, Opus or OGG is the way to go for pretty much any audio file. So to summarize, WAV is great if you need to go easy on the CPU of the player. Flac is great for archiving. OGG and Opus are usually great for all in-game audio. Opus even better since it can save a lot of space. But if CPU labor or delay is a factor, then OGG is a great alternative. So all in all, Opus might be the best choice for many visual novels. This isn't true for all games, obviously. The game I'm currently working on, for example, Mycorrhiza, has a more complicated dynamic audio setup. And because of that, delay especially is a bigger factor. We recently experimented with using Opus for a more delay-acceptable system, but OGG worked better in the end. But if Opus would have worked, we could have saved about 50% of space for that specific section. Check the game out if you want to hear what I mean. All right, let me know if you have any questions. Like I said, I will be uploading the document with the more forward explanation into the show stream later. So stream channel.
All right. Questions about audio formats. Oh, so PyTom is saying he's about to add flac support. So that's on the horizon. That is not a question, but it is a good thing to know.
Yes.
Like, or mark it as official. All right. So, and other people are saying, let's see what else is there. Do you think with modern hardware commonly in use today, would there be much of a difference between either of these formats?
Like between OGG and Opus? Is that the question?
Yeah. Nai, what did you mean? Struggle with significantly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, modern hardware not so much, but like I said, like Opus labors the CPU more. So especially if you want to include players with older hardware, you might need to make sure that you get playtesters, or maybe you have an old laptop or something to playtest the game on, to make sure that your Opus audio files don't have like a big delay, or your CPU usage goes through the roof.
All right. So someone asked, is flac or wave preferred for web browsers?
Web browsers. Actually, I'm not sure if web browsers support flac, but I mean, in the end, wave is. Actually, I have no idea, so can't answer the question. Since, like I said, I mainly dealt with engines, Rampa in particular. For web browsers, I've actually never worked on a web browser game before, so unfortunately can't answer this question.
Right, so someone asked if all these formats are compatible with mobile devices if you're making a port for Android or iOS.
Same answer. Unfortunately, only dealt with PC games, but I wish I actually, now I think about it, that would have been actually a great thing to include. But yeah. I will keep it in mind for next time someone asks this question.
I'll have to test it no matter what. Okay, in terms of voiceover lines versus SFX versus music, is there recommendations for compressing master wave files and implementing compressed files into your VN, especially if there's a lot of audio? So for different types of audio, is there recommendations for what type of compression to use?
Let's see. Compressing master wave files. Actually, not 100% sure what that question means. It's maybe the file type specifically. Yeah, I would suggest to use preferably. I mean, it might make sense to just use one file type, like just Opus or just OGG. And the thing is that for most visual novels, you can use the same file type. Like you can use a compressed file type like OGG or Opus for all audio, all in-game audio, including voice acting, sound effects, and music. But if you like in my case, there's in my game Mycorrhiza, there's one part where OGG or Opus doesn't work well. I'll likely mix and match and just use OGG for this one part where the music is more delay acceptable, and use Opus for the rest of the files.
All right. Okay. So there's a couple more like little technical details in the chat. So hopefully you can answer those in there because we need
Yep.
to move on to the next speaker. Nook, you are up.